The Laci Peterson case captivated the nation in 2002 when Laci, a 27-year-old pregnant woman, disappeared from her Modesto, California home on Christmas Eve. Her husband, Scott Peterson, claimed she went missing while walking their dog. Suspicion quickly fell on Scott due to his inconsistent behavior and the revelation of his extramarital affair with Amber Frey, who later cooperated with authorities. In April 2003, the bodies of Laci and her unborn son, Connor, were found in San Francisco Bay, where Scott had been fishing the day she disappeared. Forensic evidence and Scott's actions, including selling Laci's car and planning to flee, led to his arrest and eventual conviction. In 2004, Scott Peterson was found guilty of first-degree murder for Laci and second-degree murder for Connor. He was sentenced to death, though his sentence was overturned in 2020 and replaced with life in prison without parole. The case remains a high-profile example of media coverage influencing public perception of criminal trials. The Chris Watts case is one of the most shocking instances of family annihilation in modern U.S. history. On August 13, 2018, Chris Watts, a seemingly devoted father and husband, murdered his pregnant wife, Shanann Watts, and their two young daughters, Bella and Celeste, in Frederick, Colorado. The crime shocked the nation, not only for its brutality, but because it contrasted starkly with the picture-perfect family image Shanann had shared on social media. On the morning of the murders, Shanann, who was 15 weeks pregnant with their son, Nico, returned home from a work trip. An argument ensued between the couple about Chris wanting a divorce, during which Chris strangled Shanann to death. He then transported her body in his truck, along with his two daughters, to an oil site owned by his employer. There, he smothered both Bella and Celeste before disposing of their bodies, placing the girls in oil tanks and burying Shanann in a shallow grave nearby. Initially, Chris played the part of the grieving husband and father.
We just want to see if you left a note or anything inconspicuous, something like that.
All right.
We'll wait for our sergeant to get here, but
Okay.
we'll grab that. You don't plan on going anywhere, right?
No, I was just going to walk around the neighborhood just to honestly clear my head.
He appeared on local news, pleading for the safe return of his family. However, inconsistencies in his story and unusual behavior raised suspicions. When interrogated by police and confronted with evidence, including a failed polygraph test, Chris confessed to the murders.
I'm shaking. Both my kids are blue and they're gone. I'm just like blind, just, I'm not that person, like, I'm just like, she hurt my kids. Like I did the same thing to her.
It later emerged that Chris had been having an affair with a coworker and saw his wife and children as obstacles to starting a new life. Prosecutors portrayed him as cold and calculating, willing to destroy his family to pursue his selfish desires. The shocking nature of the crime and the tragic details, such as Bella reportedly pleading for her life, deeply horrified the public. In November 2018, Chris Watts pled guilty to multiple counts of first-degree murder to avoid the death penalty. He was sentenced to 5 life sentences without the possibility of parole. The case has since been the subject of numerous documentaries and true crime discussions, sparking debates about domestic violence, narcissism, and the hidden cracks behind seemingly perfect lives. Today, Chris Watts remains in prison, a chilling reminder of the darkness that can exist behind closed doors. On December 6, 2009, 28-year-old Susan Powell vanished from her home in West Valley City, Utah. Her husband, Josh Powell, told police a bizarre story, that he had taken their 2 young sons on a midnight camping trip in the freezing cold, and when they returned, Susan was gone. Investigators immediately found his story suspicious. No one goes camping in a snowstorm with a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and Susan's purse, phone, and car were still at home. But despite intensive searches, Susan was never found. As police dug deeper, they discovered that Josh Powell had a history of controlling and abusive behavior. Susan had told friends and family that she feared for her life, and she had even recorded a secret video documenting her assets in case anything happened to her. Authorities also began looking at Josh's father, Steve Powell, who had an obsession with Susan, keeping secret videos and photos of her. But despite their disturbing behavior, neither man was charged, and Josh maintained custody of their 2 children. With no body and no direct evidence, Josh Powell was never arrested for Susan's disappearance, leaving her family in limbo. In 2012, after years of legal battles, a judge ordered that Josh undergo a psychological evaluation before he could regain custody of his sons. But just days later, on February 5, 2012, in a final horrific act, Josh Powell locked himself and his 2 sons inside his home, doused it in gasoline, and set it on fire, killing himself and his children. The boys had reportedly begun talking about their mother's disappearance, saying she was in the trunk of the car the night she vanished. It appeared Josh took the truth to the grave with him. Despite Josh's suicide and the deaths of their sons, Susan Powell's body has never been found. Investigators strongly believe Josh killed Susan and disposed of her body, but with no remains, the case remains officially unsolved. Susan's family continues to search for answers, keeping hope alive that one day, the truth will be fully revealed. The Powell case stands as a tragic warning about the dangers of domestic abuse and the devastating consequences of a justice system that failed to protect its victims.